Kremlin comes up with another excuse for Putin avoiding meeting Zelensky. Zelensky explains why Putin keeps dodging peace talks and why Trump learns a hard lesson and washes his hands of the Ukraine war. The latest news next. In a speech at the UN Security Council on Ukraine, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky said that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin wants only war and does not think about peace.
The Russian representative is here, but of course not the one who makes the real decisions. That man fears to sit face to face with Ukraine and the world and openly admit he wants only war.
The president emphasized that Russia uses its veto power in the Security Council solely to prolong the war and continue the killings. According to him, the Kremlin is not seeking peace but trying to find ways to carry on its aggression. He also underlined that real security guarantees must become the line that Russia will never again be able to cross. Zelensky appealed to the United States, the United Kingdom, France and China to act together. In his words, only a united voice of the international community can force Russia to stop the war. The president noted that China has leverage over the Kremlin, while Russia in turn fears the United States.
Be the force that acts. Act together. Please, unite at last to stop Russia's war, and we know how to guarantee security. What we need now is a strong push to force Russia toward peace.
The Budapest Memorandum has failed and turned into empty words, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, adding that Ukraine is building a new security architecture, said in his address at the UN Security Council high-level meeting. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the Budapest Memorandum, which was intended to guarantee Ukrainian security in exchange for giving up nuclear weapons, had failed. He stressed that the agreement demonstrated how international promises could turn into empty words. Zelensky explained that Ukraine, together with the United Kingdom, France, and more than 30 other countries in a coalition of partners, was now working to build a new security architecture with expectations of strong support from the United States. Ukraine stands today as living proof of how easily solemn assurances can be abandoned when they are most needed. For years, Kiev believed in the sanctity of international commitments, only to watch those guarantees dissolve into platitudes as its cities were bombed and its people killed. The very treaty that was supposed to shield Ukraine became a symbol of betrayal. This is not just a failure of one memorandum, it is a failure of an entire global security system built on promises without enforcement. Now Ukraine is forced to build a new security architecture with like-minded nations, not out of choice, but out of sheer necessity. It is doing so with courage, dignity and faith that true allies still exist. Yet the bitter truth remains. When the hour of trial came, the country was left to fight alone. In that abandonment lies a warning to the whole world that without real action behind lofty words, no treaty, no memorandum, no international pledge is worth more than the paper it is printed on. After Volodymyr Zelensky's statement at the UN Security Council that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is afraid to sit face-to-face with the Ukrainian leader, the Kremlin is trying to justify itself. Russian presidential spokesperson Dmitry Peskov reports the Kremlin was quick to respond to the words of the Ukrainian president, who said that Putin fears to sit face-to-face with Ukraine and the world and openly admit he wants only war. In response, Peskov said that a meeting between Putin and Zelensky without prior preparation would be a PR stunt, supposedly doomed to fail. Of course, the Kremlin representative did not forget to remind everyone of the previous absurd proposal for the president of Ukraine to come to Moscow. Quote, "Why not come if you are open to dialogue?" Peskov asks. The Russian presidential spokesperson's speech also included the usual threats. Quote, "For those who do not want to negotiate now, tomorrow and the day after, positions will be significantly worse," said Peskov, trying to shift the responsibility for refusing negotiations onto Ukraine. The Kremlin's reaction to President Zelensky's challenge shows more than just irritation. It reveals fear roped in arrogance. Instead of answering the simple direct invitation to face the truth, Moscow hides behind rehearsed lines, empty ultimatums, and shifting blame. When the Russian spokesperson calls a real conversation a PR stunt, it is not Ukrainians' sincerity he is questioning. It is Russia's own willingness to look the world in the eye. For years, the Kremlin has used negotiations as a smoke screen for aggression, twisting the language of diplomacy while raining destruction on Ukrainian towns. Now, when confronted with the prospect of an honest public encounter, it retreats behind conditions, threats, and cynical invitations to come to Moscow, knowing full well such theatrics are meant to humiliate rather than resolve. Trump learns a hard lesson and washes his hands of the Ukraine war. During his speech at the UN General Assembly in New York, US President Donald Trump made several statements indicating that he is washing his hands of the war in Ukraine, reports The Telegraph. The article emphasizes that after a month of statements about Ukrainians' loss of territory to Russia, as well as statements about peace talks, Trump has made a stunning U-turn. Namely, in his latest words about support for Ukraine, the US no longer figures.
I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form.
The White House chief made another similar statement after meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe and, in particular, NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option.
The Telegraph emphasizes that the American leader is effectively shifting responsibility for Ukraine to Europe and NATO. Rather than pledging fresh support to Ukraine or loading up action on Russia, Mr. Trump appears to be handing things over to Europe and NATO. There is no suggestion of extra support for Ukraine or that he will punish Moscow further. His only commitment is to keep selling weapons to allies. The media noted, adding that Trump's position is unlikely to change the situation with the war in Ukraine. Yes, President Donald Trump understands that ending the war in Ukraine will require greater pressure on Russia than just European sanctions, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, according to his interview with Fox News. When asked whether President Trump had committed to stepping up pressure on Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin to end the war, Zelensky replied,
Yes, President Trump understands that we need more pressure on him. Pressure from Europe alone is not enough. They are our partners, but it's not sufficient.
He stressed that pressure must be applied to Russia's energy sector as well as its financial and banking systems. We spoke about this in detail and we are counting on sanctions from the United States, Zelensky added. Zelensky's words are not mere diplomacy. They are a warning to the free world. If America hesitates, if it treats Russia's invasion as Europe's problem to solve, then the war drags on. The human toll rises and international law itself erodes. Only when the US stands shoulder to shoulder with Europe, applying real, sustained, coordinated pressure, can there be a genuine chance to end the bloodshed. Anything less risks sending a dangerous message that even in the face of next aggression, the strongest democracy on earth will stop short of using its influence to defend the principles it proclaims. That's all for today. Thanks for watching this video. Support Ukraine, like and subscribe.